Hello and welcome. I'm still playing around with like lighting because this is a new setup because I overhauled my entire apartment because I really needed to feel like I was in control of something because this whole quarantine thing feels like there's a lot that's out of my control, and it's also like very reminiscent because like growing up in a cult, you're not allowed to leave the house. Um, and I am an introvert, but like staying inside by choice versus staying inside because you have to, especially when like most of your life you've grown up having to stay indoors. So having like a little bit of freedom and then having it taken away from you again, I'm very bitter. But it's still better. It could always be worse. At least I'm no longer in a cult. But I just wanted to talk about a day in a life of like a day in commune life because I'm honestly like basing my work from home schedule off of like all the structure that I had growing up, because since you're never allowed to leave, you had to have your whole schedule and everything, like all of your commune life is based around a work from home schedule essentially. So I want to give you a glimpse into a day in the life when I was like 8, and then a day in a life of like 12, and then kind of go from there and see how much time we have left. But when I was about, my schedule was the same from when I was about, since I can remember, which is like 4 or 5, until I was like 11 or 12. And I was in big communes at that time, and I was never with my family. I was always with other kids my age because they would separate us by groups, because those communes were like 60 to 100 people. So they would separate us by groups, and they would wake us up in the morning, usually around 7 or 7:30. And most communes had this same schedule. So if you were in this cult, you probably had a very, very similar schedule. So they would wake us up around 7 or 7:30 with a horrible song called It's a New Morning. It's a terrible song. I don't recommend it. They would wake us up, and then we would all like get ready and go have breakfast, commune breakfast, powdered eggs, powdered milk, military rations, anybody? And then after that, we had this thing called JJT Time. And JJT stood for Jesus Job Time, but then they called it JJT Time, which essentially means Jesus Job Time, which makes no sense, but they're a cult. They're not heavy on logic. So we would clean the house. So everyone would have a job to do. Mine was usually, when I was in the big commune, I was in charge of the downstairs toilet, which were the guest bathrooms. So if any guest ever came to visit the commune, we would have like a whole section of the house that they would be allowed in, and then whole other sections, of course, that they were not allowed to see. But I would usually be in charge of the downstairs hallway or the downstairs bathroom, and I would clean that, and then somebody would come inspect it. And if I did it right, great, and if not, I was beaten. And that's how I started my day. And then after JJT time, we would go join our classes wherever they were. We usually had a classroom, and we would have word time, which was reading the literature that WS had put out, which you've seen some of the books. And if you saw the intro series, you've seen some of the books. If not, hop on back to the intro series. And they would read that to us for 90 minutes. And like, as a bunch of like 6 to 8 to 10-year-olds, you do not enjoy being read to by an adult that hates his life for 90 minutes. The adult doesn't enjoy it either, but the kids really don't enjoy it. And after that atrocity, we would then transition into school time. And school consisted of super workbook in the subjects of math and in English. So I learned how to read and how to write, and like how to write cursive. And that's it. And then they would rip out the science section, they would rip out the chemistry section, they would rip out American history, or they would glue them together. And you were just only allowed like math or English. And after like an hour and a half to 2 hours of that, it was lunchtime. And again, after lunchtime, we would clean up, and then it was nap time. And after nap time was what they called get out time, which was exercise. It just meant like get out of the house. And there would be like, again, about 2 hours of that, because at this point, they're just trying to fill time in the day while they wait for the end of the world. It doesn't need to be useful. It just needs to be something that passes the time as you wait for Satan. So after get out time, we would come back and we would have another like 2-hour chunk of school in the afternoon, but it would be different. So sometimes it would be like constructive stuff, like more cleaning of the house. Sometimes it would be like planting stuff in a garden. Sometimes it would be weeding, but the afternoon school was usually a little bit more constructive, a little bit different than the morning school. And then it was dinner time, and then after dinner time was something they called family time. But because we were part of the family, the actual family unit, like my personal like biological father and mother and siblings were not supposed to be, I wasn't supposed to consider them my family. I was supposed to consider everybody my family. So family time just meant that like the kids could run amok and go from like room to room, and whatever family was accepting of you, they would be like, oh, this kid, like come on in and play with us, because my father was always gone on like some sort of cult business. And then my mom at that time was having a bunch of babies. So she was always having babies. And so I would go around and try and find like different nuclear family units to hang out with, because I was wholly neglected. And then it was like that in the big communes. And then right around when I was 11, we transitioned towards a smaller commune of like 40 people. And then my schedule changed. And it was essentially the same schedule, except that this time I would be in charge of the kids. So me as an 11-year-old, I got my own group of like 4 kids that were like 5 to 6, or like, yeah, 5 to 7. And then I would be in charge of them. So it would be the same day, except I would be the teacher. And at that point, when I was 12, my schooling stopped entirely. So they schooled me in math and in English up until like 5th grade level. And then right as I got to 6th grade, they were like, you don't need this. Like, you're waiting for the end of the world and you're a woman. So then they put me on what they called kitchen deacon. So I was in charge of food for the commune. So I would wake up and I would cook breakfast. And then I would watch the kids and school them, as in like yell at them to do their schoolwork. And then at a certain point, I would dip out and cook lunch for the commune. And then it would be cleaning up, get out time. And then same thing in the afternoons, I would usually like go clean out the pantry, throw out rotten food, and then cook dinner. And then family time was like no longer a thing, because that just meant more childcare for me. So at that time, Windows 95 had come out. And so I would try and get like 10 minutes on the computer to play Cheesy Pursuit or Worms. I don't know if anybody remembers Worms. And then later on, we got like a PlayStation out of the garbage, and we played Ridge Racer, Ace Combat, and Crash Bandicoot, and like those were highlights. And my schedule stayed the same. I was caretaker and a service provider up until I was like 19. And when I was 19, I moved to the US into a very large commune. It was like 3 different homes of like 30 people each that were all sister homes. And I moved into a more like managerial role for cult work. I don't know what else to call it. I was basically doing secretarial work for the cult. But that is something that I will cover in the next episode. But hopefully you guys are enjoying these. Like and subscribe if you do, and also ask me questions, because I do want to answer questions that I'm asked, because I have a lot of stuff to like say and a lot of stuff to offer, but I don't know what you guys are most interested in. So if you have a comment or you have a question, leave it, and it's very likely that I will answer, because I think that the more the darkness is brought to light, the better it is, and like basically like the more you know. So this is just a big PSA. But I hope that y'all are enjoying quarantine and maybe rehauling your apartment tonight at 9:30 when you realize things are out of your control. Otherwise, enjoy, and I'll see you next time.